If you clicked on this video, I think it's safe for me to assume that you're a fan of international cinema. Not all movies are made in the English language after all, and the only thing keeping you from discovering your next favorite movie is a language barrier. The discussions surrounding international cinema online usually focus on the big heavy hitters. You've got Japanese cinema, French cinema, Latin American cinema, South Korean cinema, Hong Kong cinema, German cinema, Italian cinema, Indian cinema, Russian cinema, and Scandinavian cinema. However, one that can sometimes go underlooked in these discussions is the cinema of Iran. That might have to do with the fact that unlike many of the other ones that I mentioned, Iran isn't exactly the most cinema-friendly place in the world. The government of Iran is very strict on what you can and can't say, and aren't afraid to jail artists if their art includes something they don't like. However, if you think government censorship and imprisonment is enough to sway artists, you'd be very mistaken. These limitations gave rise to a method of filmmaking that emphasizes naturalism, empathy, and small-budget productions, similar to the Italian neorealist movements of the late 1940s. Arguably, the three biggest directors to come out of Iran are Asghar Farhadi, Jafar Panahi, and of course, Abbas Kiarostami. The stories he tells are small-scale and relatively simple. Hell, sometimes he doesn't even have a finished script by the time he starts shooting and just lets the actors improvise. However, he tells these stories in a way that's imbued with poetry, empathy, and beauty. Now, even though I just said that his stories are relatively simple, that isn't entirely true.
Simplicity, we talk about simplicity with Kiarostami, of course, of us, but purity being the key, but it's not easy. You know, many of Abbas's features are complex. Taste of Cherry is very complex, and Certified Copy, which is a beauty, is certainly complex. But they're there to be peeled away to get to the essential core at the center.
One major thing that makes him stand out from directors similar to him is his way of playing with the movie format. Sometimes he makes meta-narratives about filmmaking itself, sometimes he breaks the rules of traditional storytelling, and sometimes he'll break the fourth wall entirely to remind the audience, this is just a movie, nothing you saw was real. What's also fascinating is that he doesn't put these things in his films as a joke or to fuck with the audience, like what I do. He does it because he's someone who absolutely adores art, and him drawing attention to the artificiality of film emphasizes to the audience why art and human expression are so important. But of course, the best way to discuss Abbas Kiarostami's work is by talking about the work itself. So I'm going to talk about a handful of Kiarostami's most popular and highly regarded films, starting with Where's the Friend's House is a movie all about a kid trying to return his friend's journal because if the friend doesn't get his journal by tomorrow, his teacher will expel him from school. The movie truly shines through its minimalist nature and its way of looking at sadness through a hopeful lens, two things that Kiarostami is a master of. It's a film about the importance of friendship and being empathetic towards others. It's a film about the adult world and how daunting it can be for a small child. It's also a film about the ways that adults can sometimes mistreat and hold power over children without being gratuitous with its content. On top of all that, the film has believable child performances and gorgeous cinematography. It's a very breezy watch as well, clocking in at only 83 minutes. Despite that, the film still takes its time without ever feeling rushed or incomplete. It says exactly what it needs to say and does it in the most tender, thoughtful, beautiful, and perfect of ways. This is an incredible movie that I'd highly recommend watching if you haven't already. Close Up is a beautifully unique movie. A complicated blend between a documentary and a drama following a man who's I can't speak, I suck at my job. Following a man who's in legal trouble after impersonating an Iranian filmmaker with scenes spliced in of the people from the case playing themselves. It's through this confusing web of what's reality, what's fiction, and what's an interpretation of reality where this film explores many thought-provoking themes. This is a film about identity, purpose, deception, justice, and the political climate of Iran. The film acts as a love letter to cinema while also pointing out its artifice. It's a really complicated and weird film, but it's really damn cool once you wrap your head around it. It's an incredibly unique documentary, biopic, drama, experimental film thing. This film kind of defies categorization. Highly recommend watching this masterpiece if you haven't already. Life and Nothing More is an incredible film and is the second film in Kiarostami's Coker trilogy. It's very similar to Close Up in that the film is a unique and complex blend between documentary and fiction. Abbas Kiarostami has such an empathetic approach to filmmaking, this film in particular focusing on the survivors of an earthquake in the region. If that's not interesting enough for you, the film follows a documentary filmmaker who often directly references Where's the Friend's House because the region the earthquake hit is where it was filmed. Because of that, they often come across the actors of said film playing themselves. Although all of Kiarostami's films use minimal music, from what I've seen, I think this film uses that sense of silence the best. It gives the film a gorgeously meditative atmosphere, like you're walking through a field of flowers in the middle of a cemetery. The film does an incredible job at showing the effects of the devastating disaster while still conveying the importance of hope and remaining strong despite the shit that life throws your way. It's a beautiful film about loss and life that I'd highly recommend watching. Although Through the Olive Trees is probably my least favorite out of Kiarostami's Coker trilogy, this film is still really incredible. So the second movie in the trilogy, Life and Nothing More, was a meta-narrative that directly references the first film in the trilogy, Where's the Friend's House? Well, this third movie in the trilogy is also a meta-narrative that directly references Life and Nothing More, making this movie a meta-narrative of a meta-narrative. Abbas Kiarostami has such a beautiful and creative way of breaking cinematic rules and conventions. On top of the wackiness of the film's style, this is a really powerful film about love and desire. It's a film that asks a very difficult question. When is it okay to strive for perfection, and when is it okay to give up? We should all strive for and fight for our goals in life, even if it means to try and try again to achieve success. But what if it's clear that the thing you desire will never work out for you? Of course, if you give up on your dreams, you could be risking your own happiness. However, what if you're risking someone else's happiness by forcing something to work out? Maybe there's hope to be found in failure, as you may find other goals to pursue. But shouldn't it still be important to put forth the effort towards the initial goal? To try and try again until you succeed, or at the very least come out a happier individual? These are all thoughts that flood into your mind while watching this movie, and especially after the film's brilliant ending. Overall, this is a very moving and thoughtful movie that I'd highly recommend watching if you haven't already. Taste of Cherry is my favorite Abbas Kiarostami film. Homayoun Ershadi gives a subtle, tragic, and moving performance as the main character. The cinematography is gorgeous and captures the Iranian landscape in a wonderful way. And of course, the way this film tackles the subject of suicide is raw and unforgettable. It's a very heavy subject matter for a film, but it's executed with such care and respect. This movie does a brilliant job at being this devastating minimalist drama about depression while still managing to show you the beauty of life and why it's so special. The car ride with the old man in particular is a scene that's so wise, poetic, and philosophical. This might be naive of me, but I honestly believe that the old man's words could help many people dealing with similar thoughts to the main characters. Then of course there's the ending. I have quite a bit to say about the ending, but I have to go into spoilers, so just skip over this next part if you haven't seen the movie. At first, I was very confused by the ending because it's a very odd way to end a movie like this. But after some reflection, I think that ending is perfect. It feels like Abbas Kiarostami's way of admitting, I don't have all the answers, and this film doesn't have all the answers either. However, if you allow me to help you feel less lost in this world, I'll try my hardest. I can't save you from drowning in the river, but I can give you a raft. Overall, this film is a masterpiece, and it really struck a chord with me. The Wind Will Carry Us is Kiarostami's most challenging film. It's a very complex film and follows a plot that is more abstract and poetic than anything we've seen so far. Because of that, I can't say I fully understand everything this movie's trying to tell me. Despite that, the emotional resonance of this film was still definitely felt on me. The film wrestles with many existential themes and philosophies in a comforting and delicate way. The main ideas that stuck with me are the ones that sort of tie into the film's title. Dialogue and imagery revolving around how stressful the weight behind every choice we make can be, and maybe sometimes it can be better to just let the wind carry us through life. That was just my personal takeaway though. This film is practically built to have different interpretations. Not my favorite Kiarostami film, but it's still pretty damn amazing. Certified Copy is a good movie, but I don't think I love it as much as many other people do. As usual for Kiarostami, the cinematography is beautiful and the performances are incredible. The film explores many themes concerning art and relationships in a thought-provoking and playful manner. However, I just didn't find this one as engaging as the rest of Kiarostami's work. It's difficult for me to put into words why I didn't connect with this on the same level as his other films. That's just how I ended up responding to the film. Don't get me wrong, I still think it's a good movie, and there are many parts of this movie that I do really like. The way the film looks at originality in art and the way the film plays around with different languages definitely makes the movie unique and memorable. However, there are also other parts of this movie that weren't exactly clicking for me. Maybe it's one of those movies that deserves a rewatch in the distant future. So yeah, those are some of the films by Abbas Kiarostami. If you're curious, here's my personal ranking and ratings on each film. If any of these movies sound interesting to you, check them out. Next video, I'm talking about the witch that turned me into a seal 7 years ago. Subscribe or something like that. Bye bye, cue that pretentious Beethoven music.